Basically, our company, we are a subsidiary of Zesa Holdings. We're an ICT arm of Zesa, specializing in the ICT services related to power infrastructure. So what we do is with Zesa Holdings, as you may be aware, Zesa, it actually has Powertel, ZETTC, ZPC, and Zesa Holdings. So us as a subsidiary, our main responsibility is actually to provide the technology and the communication part of the electricity grid. So as Powertel, what we do is our physical network actually rides on the overhead lines of Zesa. And we've got an optic fiber network right through the whole country, which actually then serves most of the corporates. We've got customers in the corporate sector. We've got also the mass market customers as well. So our vision, it's actually to provide total and unparalleled ICT solutions for clients by 2030. And our services portfolio actually includes VPN, internet in the rural and urban. But my topic for today, it's actually related to what we actually doing as Powertel to bridge that digital divide. So as a Powertel, the strategies are actually quite very simple. We actually have a digital transformation strategy. What do I mean by digital transformation? We're actually using processes of digital technologies to create new or modifying existing business processes and culture and experiences to meet the changing business and markets requirements. Why are we doing so? We're actually trying to bring relevance and to try and bridge the gap that's already existing. So Mr. Ngube maybe would actually come in with the projects that you're actually running and the technologies that we're actually deploying at the moment to actually try and fulfill that. But what I'll actually focus on now is the actually underlying concept of what we're trying to do. So when we're talking about digital divide, what are we talking about? We're talking about the unequal access to digital technology. The access may actually include smartphones, laptops, and internet. So the digital divide creates a division and inequality around access to information and resources. But the issue is actually much more than an access issue. It can also be an issue of it may not be probably be alleviated merely by providing the necessary equipment. There are maybe at least three factors at play. There's information accessibility, information utilization, and information receptiveness. So when we're talking about digital divide, it's not merely an economic divide per se. There's also an issue of usability divide. There's also an issue of the fact that, as you may be aware, technology may actually be something complicated to some other people who might not be able to actually use it. So it actually then creates that divide where people are not able to actually comprehend the usage of such technology. There's also an issue of empowerment. Some people are actually not empowered to actually use the technology at their disposal. So it's not only the accessibility issue. I know most of the times when people are talking of the digital divide, the most common factor is actually the economic divide. But there is also a situation where people actually have access to the technology, but they can't actually use it, or they are not empowered, or they actually do not actually comprehend and know how they can fully utilize that particular technology. So that brings in some divide of some sort. So that's basically what we are dealing with here when we're talking about the digital divide. But what are the things that causes the such divide? It's a lot of factors, and some are obvious. If it's an economic divide, then it may be an issue of some economic factors there. to talk about. If it's an issue of usability, then we're talking of obviously education. The empowerment may actually also be related to some economic issues. But from a statistic perspective, there are some indicators that are used to actually compare the economic inequality. One of them is called the Gini coefficient for telecommunications. So Gini coefficients are statistical measures to measure economic inequality. So when you actually take that into cognizance, you actually realize that there has been a fluctuation of inequalities throughout time, maybe since 90s up to now. But why is it fluctuating? Like it's not really like saying the economic divide is actually increasing or decreasing. It's actually fluctuating because of the fact that, for instance, as soon as we suppose we have a problem with the coverage of network, as soon as we probably cover that particular problem of coverage, then there comes another technology, and then that gap starts to widen. Remember, when you're talking of inequality, it's a comparative measure. You're comparing two things. So
Engineer, are you still there?
hello? Oh, put it out.
Engineer,
We can hear you.
Hello? Hello? Yes,
we can
can
hear
you hear me now? Oh, yes.
Yes,
So
we
I was
can hear
talking
you.
of yes, I was talking of the difference in economic inequality that then exists between certain people, maybe of different social classes. So I was saying, so that change in inequality may fluctuate, may not necessarily continuously increase. It may fluctuate because of the accelerated changes in technology. So in a way to actually bridge that gap, there is a lot that may be required. Like you'd actually realize that when we probably take, for instance, when you want to improve network coverage in the cities, you may realize that network providers have a tendency of then taking the old base stations to the rural areas. So by doing so, you are still widening the gap because you're actually more like giving an inferior technology in the rural areas, while you're putting a better one in the urban areas. So that doesn't really cover the gap per se, because by that essence of inequality, you're actually probably increasing that gap. So that digital divide gap needs to be closed. That's where probably Powertel has then taken a deliberate act to not just differentiate when it comes to the technology that we then deploy, whether it's in rural areas or in town. We would then take a deliberate stance to then, without really differentiating the social classes, and give the most appropriate technology to just everyone. I think Engineer Ngube will then come in to maybe give you a glimpse of what are the strategies that we actually deploying, and the technology that we're actually doing to try and address this gap that we then identified in the digital divide gap. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer, for such an elaborate view of the initiatives that Powertel is doing to bridge the digital divide. Engineer Mfanufikile will quickly come in to indicate. But before he comes in, I just thought I should share a brief statistics around the current penetration rate with regards to access in the country. We've got, on mobile penetration, we've got 97.5. On active mobile subscribers, we've got 14.7 million. Internet penetration currently is aggregated to 73.3. And on internet data subscribers, we've got a total of 10.6 million. And but let's go on the fixed side, which Powertel plays a pivotal role. We've got active fixed subscribers of 310,000. And we've got current smartphone penetration of 55%. But I think the bigger question for everyone would be in terms of the digital divide, like what engineer has indicated, that you would find that maybe in urban areas there is a better concentration, there's a better access, but what happened to the rural community? That's where engineer Mfanufikile is going to also explain where we still have them lagging behind, simply because most of the operators are focusing on an element of profit and loss, where they concentrate on the areas that they feel that they can quickly gain high value as soon as possible. So you'll find that that gap is still widening, mainly lagging behind in marginalized communities, in rural areas, and in some certain areas where they feel that the return on investment is not that quick. But how are we doing, especially based on this current penetration rate that is increasing on smartphone, the initiatives that Potras is doing under the Universal Service Fund, and also other initiatives that Potras is doing in terms of the community information centers, where people now have access, and also the initiative that the government is doing in trying to promote free trade around ICT gadgets and so forth. So Engineer Mfanufikile will come in quickly to give us that brief, and then we can then have the remarks, other few comments from the team before we go into the question and answer. Over to you, Engineer Mfanufikile.
Okay, thank you very much. May you please allow me to share the screen?
Yes, engineer, you can now share the screen.
Okay. Kindly confirm you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So as already introduced, Engineer Mfanufikile, I'm responsible for network planning at Powertel Communications. And I'll probably just take you through how we believe the different types of connectivity solutions are important in bridging the digital divide. If you look at what probably most of us have been doing, we've been probably concentrating on one sort of connectivity solution and trying to push it where it's most economic, which probably then ends up creating this digital rural divide. For example, if you say we are only doing fiber only, you get to a point where you realize that it might not be economic to go to certain areas. Or if you say you are doing satellite only, you get to a point where it might not be economic to go to certain areas. So when we looked at this particular case, we realized that in order to bridge this digital divide, it's important to then look at the whole connectivity spectrum, the whole plethora of connectivity solutions that are out there, and then customize or rather integrate them and then deploy them basing on the different use cases that you find. So if you look at what I'm beaming here on the screen, as part of communications, we've got an advantage that we are part of the ZESA group. So ZESA has deployed infrastructure into almost every corner of the country. I think we all know of the Raw Electrification Agency. Almost every corner of the country actually has electricity. And what we then realize is that that's actually an advantage, because if we are deploying our fiber, we are actually deploying it on top of that existing ZESA infrastructure. So that has given us an advantage to then say we can easily reach all corners of the country. And then when we are now there, we then look at case by case to say, for example, if we pass through a school close to our power line, we can easily drop fiber optic into that school, and we give them high bandwidth capacity, and thereby we give those, if it's a raw school, it means they now have access to e-learning, they now have access to e-libraries, they've got free books which are available online. And as we saw during the COVID era, when remote learning became a thing, some of the children who are in the rural areas, they actually got disadvantaged because there was no connectivity in the area. So in cases where fiber is very close, we just drop off, we connect that particular school. We've connected some schools. I think our commercial teams will probably mention, we've connected some schools in Chipinge, Fig Tree, and different areas. In areas where probably we come to a mine, we can actually then explore point to multi-point radios where we get to the closest point where we've got fiber, and then we distribute using radio to cover a certain catchment area where maybe it's not economic to go to the last mile. And then we are also going into 5G LTE, 5G and LTE rather. As you can see, there are some areas where it might not be economic also maybe to deploy fiber to each and every household, but with 5G and LTE, you can actually offer high bandwidth connectivity to a very dense community, or maybe it could be a growth point where we have got a lot of people who are clustered in one area. So in that particular area, if you put in 5G LTE, you can actually cover the different, the large number of people who are concentrated in that particular area. We've got areas also which are very remote, where you would see that you need to then probably put satellites. We're also considering that as well. And in private areas like military bases and all that, there is a technology called private LTE, which offers the LTE services, but in a private setup. So these are a number of solutions which are very crucial to actually bridge the digital divide. And also, one point that I would like to probably mention is that if you look at most of these areas, probably in rural areas, yes, you might have fiber there, but you might actually pull fiber, you get to a school and you say, please connect. They can connect, but the main issue that then becomes a challenge is how do they pay back the monthly recurrent fees? Because remember, internet, we also, there's also some cost related to providing that internet. So most of these rural areas or remote areas, they've got that disadvantage that they don't have ways of then paying back. So what we have also, another strategy that we have also came up with, which we are proposing to our potential customers, is a setup of what we call data kiosks, whereby we say if we give probably a school internet connectivity, we encourage them to set up a community Wi-Fi, whereby the people in that area can actually come and then probably purchase some tokens, and they make use of that connectivity, whilst probably the school is not making use of that connectivity. So it actually then means the school can generate some income, and then it can assist them in paying back the monthly recurring fees, which then support in maintaining that network and ensuring that it's always up. So it's one of the strategies that we are actually employing, which we are proposing to our customers, And also, as I mentioned, that we are part of the ZESA group. Currently, ZESA is deploying what are called smart meters, which actually enable what is called net metering, or maybe I would call it reverse metering, whereby if you've got a meter which is intelligent enough, which is connected, you can now then, if you've got probably some renewable energy, of course, after the necessary approvals, there is that potential technically to feed back to the grid. So it's another a way that we're looking at of assisting these remote areas to say, if you are in an area and you've got your good renewable energy, you can then take advantage of that connectivity that we've given you in line with the electricity, and you probably feed back your excess electricity to the grid. And that way you can then save on your monthly electricity bill, and then probably you find a way of funding your connectivity solutions. So it's a different, a number of different solutions that are there, which we are saying they are very important for us to bridge the digital divide. We have to actually find ways of coexisting them, making sure that we deploy them everywhere and we integrate them in a way that is economic to us and also is beneficial to the remote customers. So this table is just showing these are just a few of those that I've mentioned. You see 4G LTE is good because it's got a wider coverage. You can actually reach remote and distant areas. And wired is good in that is what it's high speed, and you've got stable connections if you're using fiber connectivity. We also have some other technologies. As you know, there's something called Internet of Things. Now, we're talking of connecting people, but there is now need to connect things as well. And most of the things, though some of them are in the cities, you'd find that the farmers who are in those remote areas are the ones who have got probably agriculture, things that they want to monitor, smart agriculture, livestock that they want to monitor, smart livestock. So there are other technologies that we are also working on. For example, we've got what is called LoRaWAN, which is a long-range connectivity solution that allows connecting devices which push very, which require very minimum bandwidth, but probably might require too long a device that can run for 10 years without you changing the battery, without you even maintaining the device. So those are some of the other connectivity solutions that we believe are very important for reaching the digital rural divide. So in summary, that is what I have for you. Maybe what I would also mention is probably some of the recommendations that are important. Yeah. Some of the recommendations that are important to bridge this digital-rural divide. For example, there's need for government funding. They need to allocate dedicated funds for these projects. There's need to subsidize MRC and installation costs. There's need for collaborations with banks and all stakeholders. We actually need to come together, different stakeholders, to see how we can work together to address this. There's need to reduce taxes on equipment, especially equipment that is meant for rural areas. There's need to reduce taxes on such, and there's need for trainings. Like, for example, this particular workshop that we have, this is actually good. There's need for more of these whereby people are actually discussing how do we move forward, how do we cover the uncovered areas, how do we complement each other's efforts. And there's also need for public-private partnerships which are necessary to foster collaborations for expertise and resources. And also our regulators, they need to find ways of supporting these type of projects. Thank you very much. I'll hand you back to Mr. Mswiri to continue.
Thank you very much, Engineer Mfanufikile. I'm sure this was more elaborative and very clear. I know this subject requires the whole day. In fact, a whole conference to unpack it. But right now, at this point in time, we have got the team on board, the commercial director representation, acting Mr. Kasanga. We've got the technical director, we've got the GM innovation, engineer Mahaka, and the entire team to be able to respond to most of your questions. So I think my co-MC is he around now to be able to drive this? Or we can continue. Hello. Maybe if it seems there's some network glitches, but am I clear to everyone?
Yes, very clear, Mr. Mswiri.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kasanga. So I think we have a quick question and answer. I know our time is very limited. The session is very short. So Mr. Kasanga and other team members will be able to respond. Like I indicated, I'm inviting Madam, our regulator. I don't know if you have any few remarks as our esteemed ZNCC members prepare for their question and answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mswiri, for the opportunity. I think our able team from Powertel has already covered most of the issues, the statistics, our coverage as a country in terms of our tele-density, our internet and broadband connectivity. I'm actually attending here both as a member of ZNCC and also as a regulator. I think the challenge that we have really has been the issue of funding over taxation in our sector, and I think this has been already alluded to by the previous speaker. I think it's also, prudent to say ZNCC is a key stakeholder in our business where they can actually advocate as well for issues that have been raised in terms of the gaps that exist for us to be able to meet the maximum divide, to bridge the digital divide between specifically the rural and the urban areas. So thank you very much for the presentations. I think they really do bring light to how we can improve in terms of coverage, in terms of accessibility, and in terms of bridging the digital divide between rural and urban areas. I think it's a critical issue also for business, because business really needs connectivity for it to function in today's world. And business is not just in towns, but also business is also in the rural areas. So we want those people in the rural areas to be able to access ICTs and connectivities as well. So thank you very much. I want to recognize the leadership of ZNCC that is present here this morning, and also the leadership of Powertel that has been leading this conversation. Thank you very much, Mr. Mswiri.
Thank you very much, Madam Tewa. This is Madam Tewa, the director with our regulator responsible for international marketing and corporate affairs. Thank you very much. We feel warm to have you. It's open to our team members, to the ZNCC esteemed members to ask questions. We've got the team, Mr. Kasanga, Engineer Nyagura, Engineer Mahaka, Engineer Fiki, and the regulator as well to be able to respond to all those questions. Please feel free.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If I can start.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead, President.
Okay. Yeah. Whilst the members are preparing, one of the questions that we keep getting from members, particularly those that are based in remote areas, is the truth around Starlink. Some of them were actually seeing Starlink as an opportunity for them to just get connected without having to invest too much in a lot of cabling and stuff. And I think there have been too many reports in newspapers, some being penalized, in some cases hearing that there are discussions happening. I don't know if Ms. Mtewa is able to shed a bit more light on that. Thank you.
What?
Yes. Madam Tewa, are you still in?
Yes, I am. Can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Oh, the moment is that to the regulator for a license. However, just before trade fair, I think we had a meeting with Elon Musk himself as a regulator, and he was inquiring on the requirements for them to be able to be licensed in Zimbabwe. So what they are doing right now is that they've submitted most of their paperwork to the regulator for application, for consideration for licensing. So the licensing request is barely a month, like literally less than a month that they've submitted. And we are hoping that the rest of the paperwork will be submitted, and then we can quickly then look at licensing them. I think there's been also misconceptions in terms of that the regulator or Zimbabwe government or the sector is afraid of Starlink. I must say that there's a lot of conversations that have been happening between Starlink since they applied, Starlink and our operators here for partnerships, for leveraging on each other's networks and things like that. So really the sector is excited as well for Starlink to come on board and probably then be able to offer value, better value for our operators. I'm sure you heard that Powertel is leveraging on ZESA pylons to also provide service. I think the leverage can for Starlink as well for our operators. So I think we are hoping that everything will be on board and we'll be able to license them as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director, Madam Tewa, for those responses. I also want to refer, I think even team members, it's actually on YouTube, will be able to share the link where the Director General was speaking at the ZITF, the recently held Digital Economy Conference. I think it was very insightful and quite a lot of detail was also available. More questions thank you very much, President. I don't know if we have many other esteemed members to.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mchiri. My name is Masese Thomas. Sorry, I was supposed to be the MC, but the digital divide, I'm based in Mtare, and the network was very bad. But I hope you are hearing me.
Yeah, we can hear you, Mr. Masese. You need a Powertel connectivity there.
Yes, I think that's one of the questions I wanted to actually ask. Because I'm not sure, but you seem to be very thin on the ground despite your wide network. And I think with your network, if you're leveraging on the ZESA pylons, that's a low-hanging fruit for you. We should be seeing you more often. But how much is your market share in terms of penetration for the mass market? Then in terms of what has been asked about Starlink, how do you feel in terms of competition? And then lastly, the engineer Fanikile spoke about a lot of solutions that he was talking about of closing the divide with the rural people. My biggest worry is how does it compare in terms of cost? You know, at the end of the day, it's all about accessibility in terms of cost. The rural component, how are you making any effort to make it accessible in terms of cost? Maybe those are the three elements that I wanted to talk about. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Masese. And I was just talking to the acting commercial director, so I will take the first one, and I think the team members will join in on the other questions. Let me just take the esteemed members to exactly the formation of Powertel. Initially, Powertel was formed to support the electricity grid system. So we saw the utility investing in fiber that has been traversing along the pylons. Initially, an investment of 963 kilometers was done, and it was traversing, going to Mozambique, handshaking TDM undersea cable into international gateways, London, Amsterdam, and New York. The same also was traversing and handshaking with BPC, which is Botswana Power Company. What these utilities within the Southern African Power Pool then did was that they realized that because of that innovation that comes with that OPGW fiber, which also acts as earth for the electricity grid system and also is used for grid control, is that we then handshaked with the Botswana Power Company, which formed a unit because they realized that they needed to also get license and also commercialize, taking advantage of turning the utility into a national ICT grid. So they then formed a company called Bofinet, which we then handshaked with. And that time we're using that route to go and terminate Terraco into international gateways, the same London, Amsterdam, and New York. So that was the primary role of Powertel, to support the electricity grid system. So you realize that there is a lot of work that is underlying in terms of what Powertel does within the utility or the power or the electricity industry that perhaps is not out there for advertising. And then when we then went into the commercialization, you realize that utilities are always also upgrading. Maybe before I go into that, utilities are always upgrading. Right now, there's talk for smart grid, there's talk for aggregation of renewable energies, and innovation like the distributed energy resource management solutions are also needed. Internet of power, Internet of things, and they need the technology wing to be able to drive that. So you realize that in terms of the share, if we are to talk of the mandate, that forms a huge mandate that the ICT wing has been mandated with. Then in terms of commercialization to other companies, you realize that we control quite a number of companies, especially look at banks. We do a lot of underlying technology solutions for many banks that perhaps I may not be able to mention, the security forces and so forth. So we have a model that is formed around the three pillars, which is enhanced broadband, ultra-reliance, low latency technologies, and also we are going into machine-to-machine with the advent of using fiber as a backbone and 5G, which my team members have also indicated. Let's look at robotics being able to come on board, artificial intelligence, and so forth. So I thought I should share that. So in terms of clientele, we do command quite a huge clientele because we have been mainly on B2B business, controlling quite, I can say, more than 98% of banks and many corporates, which we have. So in terms of B2B business, the approach has been mainly direct marketing, direct engagement, customer relationship management, which has not been very out there. But at some point in 2014, we went into a disruptive mode where we went into the model of mobile business, where we introduced the CDMA, which was called Code Division or Multiple Access, and we're deploying technologies that was delivering speeds of 3.1 megabits per second. But we then upgraded our platform into what we call LTE with a very good spectrum. And this is something that, like Engineer Nyagura and Fanfikle indicated, that we're looking at going into that model. That is where usually the measurement of the mode of the market share is done mainly because of the mobile business, which makes a lot of noise and have access to, in terms of its positioning, it is mainly to the public, not mainly to the B2B business. We are still growing our network because like we indicated that now we have started a model of what we call rural datafication, where we are now going into rural areas, looking at marginalized areas, connecting clinics, government organizations, commercial centers, mining areas, in the model which we call the end load strategy, making use of the existing ZESA infrastructure. So that is the model that we currently have embarked on to turn the national power backbone into an ICT backbone and taking advantage of value addition that we can derive from that investment. I don't know if I've tried to indicate that. So we are coming to any area, and we believe that in line with the NDS 1 and Vision 2030, we're also looking at total datafication, where we feel that we should be in many places by then, in line with the National Development Strategy. The other questions, I think I will also invite my team members, Commercial Director Acting, to also chip in and share in terms of the other questions. I don't know if you don't mind to repeat the second question or the third question as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, maybe I would just want to buttress what you said. Our esteemed corporate sales manager, Mr. Mswiri, just to weigh in my thoughts in terms of what we're doing is Powertel as a brand. You would want to appreciate that we've got major projects on the cards where we are also making some strides to bridge the digital divide by partnering other entities or other international groups, so that we would actually make some strides into supporting the less privileged or rather disadvantaged people in the rural areas. A case in point, I would speak to a project where we're working our way out to partner UNICEF, so that we would actually connect schools so that they've got access to data. So we've got a pilot project we are looking at, probably for starters, to partner roughly about 19 or 20 schools, where we are aiming to have a pilot project which can become a launchpad to extend to other schools as well, provided we could have seen sufficiency in terms of a project outcome and more pronounced benefits. Suffice to say, we've got also some partnerships we are working with. You would appreciate that Powertel is a member of the ITU, which is the International Telecoms Union, and also we are working hand in glove with World Mobile, so that we're trying to create what we call smart villages, where we are aiming at connecting clinics, schools, some rural authorities, so that nobody's left out. We've got what we call a double-pronged approach as Powertel, which is a ZESA subsidiary, where on one arm we've got total datafication, which is right total electrification by the ZESA group. So yes, we may be slow in terms of our presence, but somehow with the technologies, we are looking forward to coming into space, like what has been preempted by Engineer Mfanufikile and Engineer Nyagura. We hope to improve once we get on board in terms of mobile technology as well. Predominantly right now, we're operating in the fixed mobile space, but with some additives coming into play in the domains of Internet of Things, car tracking facilities, asset tracking facilities, and many other services like cloud services. So we hope to improve once we rope in 4G LTE technology and LoRaWAN. That's when we hope to improve in terms of visibility and our market share. Those are my basic submissions. Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kasanga. Any further questions from the esteemed members? Please feel free to engage.
Maybe the last one. I hope the lady from Powertel is still around. Why has our data been continuing to be high? I don't know. You guys, are you not leveraging on economies of scale or something to bring down the cost? The cost is a bit on the high side. Is there anything, or is there any expectation on the part of the public that eventually data charges will come down?
Hope we still have our regulator. With us, Madam Tewa. seems like she's not with us right now. I think it could be either network. But in our view, if you look at the region, in the region, the outcome seems to suggest otherwise, that the issue of cost is still in Zimbabwe is too low. I would have loved, the time permitting, to actually share with you, I think, the entire, comparison with the region. But there's a lot of work that has been happening of late to look at that, following, I think, complaints that had gone to Fortress. And I'm sure that the new rates, even that then came, they are not, I think, outrageous in my view, comparison to other regions as well. But a lot of work is still happening. If you just to indicate to you, the more the players come, the more the access increases, the lesser, the more the competition also increases, and the lesser the customers will be able to pay. I will take you back in 2010, 1 meg used to cost about 2,300 US. But now we're looking at an average of $50, $70, somewhere around there. So that's a drastic reduction that comes with the introduction even of new technologies. Back then, we used to, most operators used to speak of a competitive advantage around the number of base stations. But I think with new technologies coming on board, we're talking of customer experience, we're talking of access, regardless of whatever model of technology that you're bringing on board. So that's the evolution that comes with technology. And in the future there, we are heading towards what we call the fourth industrial revolution, where obviously there will be a mandatory coexistence between the biology, the technology, and the social. And obviously that is going to put down further, lowering the cost of access, as we also increase even the presence and the number of technologies that comes on board. So it's a journey that we are moving, and I'm sure with the commitment that is coming from the government, where they are indicating that 3 things are mainly going to drive this economy: the agriculture, the mining, they indicated, and I would like to underline that, the robust digital economy. So you'd find that a robust digital economy is a plethora of technologies that are mixing in and coming on board, complementing to be able to provide access that is accessible and affordable to the generality of the Zimbabwean. So I think it's a road that we are almost the end. It has been also enshrined in NDS 1, NDS 2, and obviously Vision 2030. So we are moving with that, and we hope that very soon we'll be able to offer, I think, the lowest rates possible. Mr. Masese?
Yes, sir.
Are you still around?
Yes, I'm around.
I don't know. Do we still have any other questions? Would you want to take over on this one? Because I'd also asked it to be excused because I'm going into another meeting, but our team members will be available. Our head of commercial also will be available to respond to any other questions, and the entire team members. I don't know.
Thank you very much. I don't know if there are still any members. Johannes, any questions?
Yes,
Mr. Masese?
Yes, sir.
Yes, may I just pose this quick question just to get a feel of things?
Thank you.
Right.
Please go ahead.
My name is Andrew Kondo. I'm actually in Wange. So I just had a few questions, probably. Unfortunately, I think the regulator has left, but I take it that Engineer Mfano Figile and the rest of the team can assist. The issue of teledensity, especially in marginalized areas. If you look at your map north, I think if you look at the sparsity of telepenetration, it's quite a sorry one. Does Powertel have any plan to take sure that they capitalize on that gap and quickly strike, as you know, that most of their infrastructure actually is coming from the Hwange power station? That's my question number one. Then my second question was actually on the cost of this rural datafication project that Powertel has rightfully taken on board. I wanted to know the extent of the regulatory support that they are getting probably from Potras to make sure that this is the light of day, number one. And I've seen a lot of tax incentives, especially when such national projects are being taken on board. I'll give you an example, like in mining, we've seen tax holidays. We've seen a lot of these tax freebies being given to the investors. Can the same also be extended to technology, especially if you consider that this economy will be based on three fundamentals, that is your agriculture, your mining, and your technology. Mining and technology, they constitute already 67% of the basis. So can we equally also get a holiday on the technologies that we want to import and bring on board so that you can lower those costs? I think those are my two questions that I would like clarified, probably either by the Powertel team and or with the regulator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kondoe. Mr. Msiri, and your team, would you mind taking those three or so questions? Engineer Ngwe, are you there?
Okay, thank you very much. I'll address the first question, and then maybe we'll also request that the speaker repeats the other questions so that we can further attend to them. You mentioned areas like Matebele North. We actually, according to our raw datafication strategy, we're actually targeting a lot of those areas in raw areas, not just Matebele North or Mat South, or we're targeting the whole of Zimbabwe. But since you mentioned Mat North, I'll probably just mention some of the areas where, as you know, we've got recent fiber that was recently commissioned that starts from Bulawayo, passing through Nyamandlovu area, it passes through Cholocho, Kwai area there, passes through Crossdete, all the way up to Hwange area. So we actually have our backbone actually passing through those areas, and very soon we'll be setting up points of presence in those areas and start connecting those areas. We actually realized that those are some of the areas that had been left marginalized. We also have another project which is starting from Hwange area going towards Kamativi. There's a mine there that is there. However, with that project, we're expecting also the schools and the community close to that area to also benefit from there as well. And recently, this year, early this year, we completed another project starting from Bulawayo all the way to Kwanda. Because we are leveraging the ZCTC infrastructure, our lines are actually passing through some areas which normally, if you were just deploying fiber, you probably wouldn't go there. For example, the Kwanda to Bulawayo line is passing close to schools like Mchabez area there. There's a number of areas which were previously not connected, which might actually then benefit from that project. And we also did another project starting from Bait Bridge to Mwenezi area and Mwenezi up to Triangle area. So there are a lot of raw areas which are in Mat South and Mat North, which have already been covered by that particular project. We'll also be doing another one from Kwanda to Zishavane. Also, we expect some mines and schools to benefit also from that project as well. So I just decided to just mention the ones in Mat North and Mat South, maybe because the speaker has mentioned. But if you look at our expansion plans, we actually want to go to everywhere where there is ZESA infrastructure. We want to say for every kilowatt there should be for every megawatt there should be a Mbps megabyte of data. I think that's the statement that our bosses usually mention a lot. So we doing a lot to cover the areas, and as mentioned, once we've got fiber there, it means we can now then extend to wireless. We can then even deploy Internet of Things solutions. So we've tried to cover a lot of areas, and we'll continue doing that as well. I don't know if Engineer Nyakura probably wants to add on to that as well. Question?
I think you just covered the important aspects there, but maybe to be specific to his requirement, you then understand that our network is actually a fixed network. It's not like a wireless network, so it's more like a line of presence which has been deployed. So it normally serves maybe as a backbone, probably to backhaul any access network technologies that may actually be then need to be installed, so that there's actually easier access to that particular technology. Maybe we can actually get the second question. I didn't get the second question quite well, and the third one.
Mr. Kondo, you want to repeat that other part?
Very well, Mr. Masese. Thank you very much for the second bite of the cherry. So my second question was to say, my second question was to say, how far have we gone in terms of the regulatory support for this project? That's why I was thinking that probably Madam Mteyiwa could also come in, because these are actually relational issues between Potras and Powertel, I suppose. And then my third question was to say, in terms of the costs, we have seen in industries like mining, some tax incentives being given to people who want to invest on such national projects. Can the same also then be cascaded to the rural datafication project per se? Maybe we can get some tax holidays on imported equipment or something like that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Your first question, okay. I'm not sure if the regulator is still available, but the question is to do with the regulatory support. I understand the regulator has got the Universal Services Fund. They use that normally I think some 2% taken from every service provider. They then use that fund to develop areas which are marginalized, or which most of the network providers do not see business in actually deploying. So they identify those areas. I think they've actually some list that they've been identifying some projects. Maybe they can share that if they are actually in listening at the moment. But what I know is they've got some projects that they then deploy. Maybe it could be a base station sponsored by that Universal Services Fund to actually cover that previously marginalized areas. So the strategy, I think it's still there. I'm not sure about if it's adequacy to say, is it really covering, is it enough to cover our needs? But there is a strategy, and there is regulatory support in that aspect. And then there's the issue of cost incentives to support such initiatives as rural datafication. Yes, I think this will be a very welcome development to actually get such. It actually address, there's the issue of the costs, that also some question, I think there was a question to do with the escalating costs of connecting of data. You'd realize that the cost structure of deploying telecommunications equipment is quite very capital intensive, and it actually requires forex So you may realize that whenever there is some for forex scarcity in the market, it actually affects the cost of actually the giving out those services. So the initiatives for government to actually offer some incentives, I think, will go a long way in actually addressing the issue of the accessibility in terms of costs of actually giving out the services that the populace would actually require.
Thank you very much, engineer. We have another question that is on the chat. Maybe the Powertel team can help us. It says Powertel a new optical ground wire (OPGW) project and bolster internet connectivity. Any update about this? Engineer Jagura or Nube, you can take us through.
Yes, Powertel is indeed pursuing some, it's actually several OPGW projects that to actually having. I think Engineer Nube went through some of them where we're actually installing some fiber in from some has been actually been deployed from Wange to Kwekwe thereabout, and also in Gwanda. So there are several OPGW projects that we actually been pursuing to actually roll out to improve internet connectivity. Yes, I'm not sure which in particular the Mr. Mankolo has been referring to, but definitely yes, we've got several other projects on OPGW fiber that we're actually deploying at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much, engineer. Any other questions from members of the who are attending? I don't see any hands. Maybe I should take this opportunity to thank all the people who attended the meeting. I want to thank the team from Powertel. I learned quite a lot. I did not know much about Powertel. I only saw one SIM card at one time, but I did not know what to do. Now I noticed that you almost have 98% of the B2B market, which is quite commendable. I hope that you come down. What I've just noticed as well is that what we call costs from the engineer's point of view and from the layman or the data consumer point of view, we are very far apart. For us, when we talk about the cost is what I pay out to get the data. And so far, we feel that is very expensive. But you guys compare us with the region. I don't know what the region pays, but maybe they're also feeling the cost, but we are feeling that cost. We hope that it will come down later and that we can. But I noticed when I go to South Africa, when I buy some data for a few runs, I last for a long time. When I buy almost the same year, I don't last. I don't know. So I think there's a discrepancy between what you call a cost because you are looking from a bigger picture and what we call a cost from a consumer's point of view, because I'm looking at what comes out of my pocket. Maybe because our incomes are low, then the portion of the income that goes towards data becomes a bit larger and it affects our elasticity of demand. But maybe those are the gaps. But thank you very much, Mr. Mchiri and your team, for coming through. Madam Konto, Engineer Admanya Gura, Andrew, it's Admanya Gura and Nuve and the other rest of the team that came in. It was a very enlightening opportunity for us. We hope in the future the regulator will stay around, or we have a seminar just done by the regulator and you join in so that we can see how we can, because we have a lot of demand for these. I don't know if you are going to target schools in the future. I come from Africa University. The issue of cost for data for students is quite very high. And we hope that you also target schools as part of your expansion efforts. Thank you very much. I hand over back to Johannes, ZNCC, for the closing of the meeting.
Thank you so much, all members. We have joined the meeting, and Powertel for such insights, and also the president of